Well, chivalry's not dead. My boyfriend came up to my door as I'm filming to give me a piece of chocolate. So delicious, so sweet, so kind. But like, what better way to film a February recommendation video having chocolate in your teeth? That's just like that's what you have to do. You have to have chocolate in your teeth. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing the February picks that I have chosen for you guys that you guys can read and pick up for the month of February. Now, I do want to let you guys know, I went through the list like maybe half an hour ago. I literally just went through my list of books that I have read, and I just chose out books that I feel like were really memorable romance books. So these aren't going to be your typical like cheesy contemporary rom-coms. These are going to be like a mix of abstract type of stories. There's a gothic mystery in there. There's also more of like a poetic type of abstract and paranormal and a fairy tale type of romance. I wanted to do romance books that weren't just like the cheesy contemporary romance books, but I wanted to do romance books that weren't just like super cheesy rom-coms. I wanted to do something that had like a lot more like of a heavier theme, but not too heavy where it's like this is a textbook to read for the month of February, but something where it had like a lot more deeper of a look into the like romance, and it held a lot more like memorabilia towards me when I read the stories. So I wanted to choose romance books that were going to be memorable for you for the month of February, and things that were more like realistic type of romances, as realistic as they can be, because some of these are like definitely not something that can happen in real life, but you'll see what I'm about to dive into and go over. But yeah, I'm really excited to share these stories because these are, like I said, not typical contemporary romance stories, romance involved in the story, but it's like a deeper story. So I'm really excited to share this list with you, and I have curated a list of 6 different types of books. I do want to let you know one is like actually a trilogy, so I'm gonna count that all as like one because it's like one set, but 6 different choices that you can choose from for the month of February. So without further ado, let's get started. The first book I want to share is kind of by a controversial author right now. A lot of controversy going on right now in the book world, but aside from the drama and all the controversy, this is one of her older books, and it was one of her books that she decided to give a try, like a different type of theme, and it is called Layla by Colleen Hoover. Now, before you guys jump past this video and you're like, oh, it was Colleen Hoover, this is honestly like something that was like different that she wrote. It's a paranormal romance, so it sounds really weird and you're like, I'm not really into that type of stuff. It doesn't like hold a lot of paranormal like type of romance in it. It has like some type of like in the story, but it's not like really heavy. So you're following Layla and Lead, and there is a huge like an accident. Like, I don't even think it's considered an accident. There was just something traumatic that happened between the both of them, and especially to Layla, to where she's kind of physically and mentally kind of disabled at the moment, and so she just ends up kind of just losing herself. She's just different, she's not the same, and that also means like the romance is not the same. So what Lee tries to do, as he tries to be a good boyfriend, he takes her back to a bed and breakfast that they fell in love in a long time ago when they first started dating, and he tries to rekindle their memories and have her fall in love with him again. And think of it as a kind of like The Vow, but like make it paranormal. So it's kind of like that, like you kind of get like that gist of the story, and the overall following, you're kind of just following him going through that, like kind of struggling obviously, because it's not going to be easy, you know, especially with how traumatic things were, and her being physically disabled and also mentally like kind of impaired at the moment. Then you also kind of see another character, Willow, which he confides in a lot, and just ends up being connect with her a lot more deeper than he should be. And before you think you're like, oh my gosh, I don't like that, I don't either. Like, I'm not gonna say what it is because I'm pretty like, I'm not trying to spoil it, but if you're thinking it, I don't either. But this story actually had a really kind of crazy twist, and it was something, I don't know, I think I've read other paranormal stories before, so I kind of somewhat guessed it, but it's not like in your face guessing. So I think the ending and the twist of it will kind of pull you out of it to where you're like, oh, okay, that was really interesting. So if you pick it up, I hope you enjoy it, because it was one of those stories where it was really weird, and it kind of like was kind of odd because, you know, paranormal romance, I'm not really used to those, but it was just something where I was just genuinely interested to find out what was going to happen to Layla and Lead, and to see like, is Lead an actual like good boyfriend? Like, is he? Like, you know, I just had so much questions and so much things I want to find out. And it just shows, this whole story is like kind of based on like, obviously it's kind of like a romance, but it's like somewhat of a mystery, I guess. I don't even want to say it's a mystery, but it's just like you're just trying to figure out something. And it was just one of those stories where I just genuinely want to find out what was going to happen to them, and I just want to find out what the meaning of everything was. If you do pick it up, I hope you enjoy it, because it genuinely kept me on my toes. I found it to be such an interesting read, and it was just one of those stories where I feel like the whole outline of it and like the plot of it is pretty genius. Like, I feel like it actually really, really good. Now, the next story I wanted to talk about is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. You're following two main characters, Yasmin and Josiah, and they just recently divorced with their kids, and they are learning to co-parent together. And it's just one of those stories where you're gonna have like the trope of like what could be a second chance romance type of trope, and you pretty much also just kind of uncover like the memories that they had together. Obviously, like when they had a family together, they had so much history together, and it got to the point where they split up. And you're kind of following like backtracking in time, seeing current time, and kind of just leading up to what's going to actually happen between these two different characters and their paths diverting to different areas. And then also, I do want to let you guys know that there is trigger warnings in this story, so just to let you know. But this is like one of those stories where it held a lot of deep topics, and not too deep where it was like too serious, but there was like some deep moments in there as to like, it felt like it straightened their relationship. And it was just one of those stories where I just genuinely wanted to know if they're going to be together again, and I wanted to know about all the characters. I had so much fun learning about not just the two main characters, but even the side characters and like their stories. And it was just, I love Kennedy Ryan's like writing style. The story was actually like really romantic sometimes, and it was like also really heart-wrenching too, because there's just so much emotions put into this story. And like I said, like there is some trigger warnings, a lot of deep topics in it, but it was such a like a really emotional story yet humorous story. So it was like, I guess you can consider it somewhat of a rom-com, but it's not that lighthearted, but it still has like really like, it actually had a lot of humor in the story, a lot more deeper humor than I thought that would actually have in the story. So I just feel like this is such a good book to pick up. The romance in it was really, really cute, definitely a slow burn, and I just really love seeing like the two people that had so much love for each other at one point, and like looking back at their history and then seeing how it is now. I don't know, I'm like a sucker for those type of stories, and yeah, it's just one of those stories that it was like really deep, really meaningful, and I recommend this story to a lot of my friends. The next one you're gonna follow is kind of somewhat the same thing of like following the past, but the next book I'm recommending is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. And this story follows two characters. You start off the story in a subway in New York, and there's a guy who sees this girl across the subway, and you can tell that their instant connection is not because they just instantly fell in love with each other. It's not because they instantly fell in love with each other, it's because they've known each other and they were in love with each other. And you pretty much just like have like a whirlwind of like following like back to like when they first started college, their relationship kind of starting out and leading up into their adult lives, and like how different their lives are, and how they ended up just diverting paths, like completely just having totally different lives. And I think it was really cool to actually see like their storyline become like them as like when they were like kids, like they were just reckless kids and just like young love. And I don't know, like when I watched The Notebook, one of my favorite things about The Notebook honestly is like when you're kind of following Allie and Noah's relationship when they first started dating, and then seeing how they are in current time. I don't know, I just love stories like that. I love when you can see like how reckless and like all the like first times they had together and all the moments that they had together, and like them just like thinking about life in like a deeper way, a lot more deeper than it would be. Also, they're all like playing, I think it's the Super Bowl right now, so I'm sorry if you can hear my entire family just like screaming and playing. But yeah, it's just one of those stories where I really enjoyed like following them when they first started talking, and like seeing how they were like reckless and kids, and seeing how their lives kind of just diverted, and then seeing how completely opposite their lives are, and kind of just like leading up to the present time. I don't know what it is, I just love stories like that, like where it's like a buildup of like what happened, what could have happened. And it's just one of those stories where as you can tell by the title, Before We Were Strangers. I just feel like it was one of those like realistic type of love stories, and it was one of those stories where it was really cool to watch them grow and like see their relationship and like have the memories that they had. And it was like kind of like an indie film. I can't explain it. It just gave me like that indie film type of vibe, and I just feel like it was one of those stories that were really nostalgic, and it's one of those like could be second chance romance type of stories where they see each other again and just see like what's gonna happen. Like, are they gonna talk again? Are they gonna see each other past that subway again? So it was one of the stories I really enjoyed, and it's something that at the time I was reading and I was like, wow, this kind of makes me feel like, it gives me that nostalgic feeling. So if you do pick it up, I really hope you enjoy it, because it kind of provided like that movie, like that indie film for me. The next story I wanted to recommend is actually a gothic mystery, and I know that sounds really odd, but it's called Anatomy, a Love Story by Dana Schwartz. And this would probably be a book that I would probably want to recommend you reading like more near spooky season. But the reason I wanted to recommend it now is because not everybody likes to read those types of books just during spooky season. And this is like something that I feel like is actually a really cute love story. Like, it was just like, if I could put this book into an object, I would think of it as like those little music boxes, those old school ornate music boxes where it's like you open it up, there's like, I think my mom used to have them, but they're like decorative eggs and they have like ornate details on them, like little bows and ballerina shoes. And then you open it up and there's like a little small ballerina in the middle just like spinning around and plays like the most like twinkliest, delicate, yet eerie, like little twinkly music. That's exactly how I put this story. So you're pretty much following Hazel, and I think this takes place during like the 1800s, when like women were, it's like frowned upon for women to do anything remotely towards what men do, like such as surgery and anything medical. Like, women weren't supposed to be doing that. They were supposed to be just be wearing these like foo-foo dresses and acting a certain way and behaving a certain way, and just pretty much stayed at home. Like, they weren't allowed to take part in any type of things that got their hands dirty or anything like that. And you're following Hazel, who has a huge love for anatomy, and one exact hobby she has is dissecting bodies. And back then, when surgeons were like up and coming and learning, they had to get bodies from, you know, the deceased. So like, well, obviously they had to get bodies from the deceased, but back then I think like the plague was a huge thing, and so they would practice on all those bodies. And you're pretty much following her and then crossing paths with another character named Jack, and he is a gravedigger. I think in the story they refer to him as like the Resurrection Man, but he pretty much is hired and paid by giving other surgeons bodies from the graves. I feel like I worded that terribly, but he's pretty much a gravedigger. He goes in there, gets the bodies, and sells them to the surgeons who want to practice on them. And that's how he gets by. That's how he gets by, because obviously it's like he's struggling, he's poor, and there's only so many ways you can make ends meet back then. And then you're following Hazel and Jack just, you know, converting each other's paths, and it's just a really cute gothic mystery love story. Like, it was really good. And when I say gothic, it's not like heavy gothic. It was kind of a little bit somewhat of like a whimsical type of gothic. Like, it was more lighthearted. This is like a young adult, so it's not gonna be really heavy or anything, but it was just genuinely so cute. It was just such a cute, twinkly, like trinket of a love story, and I genuinely had so much fun with the story. If you do read it, I would recommend you playing some dark academia with like rain music in the background, because when I did that, it just set the vibe perfectly. And I know it's weird because it's like a gothic story. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say gothic in this scene, but it is one of those stories where it's not a typical like cheesy rom-com, but the romance in it was actually so cute, and just their interaction with each other and like how their paths had to collide. It was just really cool. Like, it's really interesting. Not cool in real life, but cool in story, like the story. So I had so much fun with the story. I really wanted to find out what was going to happen. So if you do pick it up, I really want to know what you guys think of it, because I really enjoyed this story so much. I honestly thought it was so cute and like kind of romantic. It was just really cute. Really loved it. Definitely recommend it. Okay, the next story is something I've recommended in like one of my favorite books in 2024, and it's actually Shark Heart by Emily Haybeck. Now this story is more of like on the poetic abstract side, and you're pretty much following two main protagonists, and in this world there's a disease going around where people are slowly mutating into wild animals. I know the whole thing sounds really weird, but to me the concept of it sounded interesting. But then the reason why I chose this as like for the month of February read is because you're following two main characters, and they are a married couple. I think they're like recently married, but they obviously have been together for a long time, and you're pretty much reading about their transitions of them as individuals, them in their past, and then them throughout their marriage, and then up until the current time of when her husband is turned to a great white shark. And it's actually one of those stories where it kind of felt like raw and realistic, even though this situation is definitely not realistic, like us mutating to animals, but it just felt like you could feel their emotions, and you could just see how like you felt anxious, but yet you felt so distant and heartbroken, and then you also felt like you were accepting. And it's just one of those stories that like provided like so much symbolism to me. I feel like it's one of those stories that I could see my teacher giving us, and not in a boring way, but like a genuinely interesting story that I feel like if they gave it to us in college and told us to depict it, I would have so much fun depicting this story. And I chose it because I feel like it was really interesting to like watch the two main characters and like see how their marriage just kind of started off like any other marriage, you know. I mean, not any other marriage, everybody's marriage is obviously different, but you know, you get it from like the basic standpoint of like in a story when you're reading two people getting together, their paths, and then you uncover more towards the end like about the individuals and how different their paths are, and then how they ended up coming together, and just them in present time. And they're pretty much writing letters. I feel like they're writing letters to each other, but also to themselves. And it was just one of those stories where if you also are like, I don't like letters and stories, neither do I. I'm not like a fan of reading letters, but this is one of those like, it was really short and quick. Like this is a really fast-paced read, and the letters are pretty much like poems, and it's not like super like straight up poetry, but it's just like, it was really poetic, like lyrical, short, and just like told as if they're like telling each other something real quick. And it was just really interesting. Like I like flew through this story, and I really loved like all the emotions that it pulled out of me, and then also just seeing them as like a married couple, and then like seeing them go through these changes. And I don't know, I just feel like it's one of those like stories where I know it's like kind of weird to recommend for the month of February, but I also feel like this story is like a representation of love, and just in like a way deeper sense. So I don't know, if you do read it, I hope you understand what I'm saying, and I hope you guys, if you guys have read it, I hope you guys did enjoy it. Obviously if you didn't, that's totally fine too, but I just feel like this is one of those stories I have to recommend for the month of February. I just feel like it's just one of those really interesting stories that just like stuck with me, and it was just really interesting just reading their excerpts to each other and to themselves, and like seeing all these changes. Yeah, so I definitely recommend this story. I feel like I'm getting really deep, and I don't mean to get that deep. Definitely recommend this story for the month of February. Okay, now lastly I'm going to be recommending is the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and I do want to give you guys a heads up. I was not a big fan of the first book. The last two were like my favorite. If you're looking for something like on the fairy tale type of side of like romance, I feel like this trilogy, you probably heard about it everywhere on BookTube and Book Talk, even though I don't have a TikTok, and that's like a different discussion. But this trilogy is like one of those well-known trilogies that everybody talks about, but I genuinely love this trilogy. I feel like it really is like those fairy tale type of romances, but it's like, obviously I think it's like considered young adult, but it's one of those stories where it just really provides that fairy tale vibe, and you're pretty much following Evangeline and Jax, and they pretty much make a bargain. Jax is the Prince of Hearts, and Evangeline makes a bargain with him because she needs to save her betrothed, someone that she was set to marry. It's just such a fun, adventurous read, and I love the fairy tale like setting of everything, and I love the pet names. I love the interactions with Evangeline and Jax and the banter, and I literally love the romance in this trilogy so much. Like, it's so good. It's just like one of my most favorites. I absolutely adored it. I loved everything about the story. So I would definitely recommend this trilogy if you have not picked it up. I just feel like it's something that would just, for me, I just feel like this would be such a good TBR to have on your February monthly read. I just feel like a fairy tale romance, like, that's just the perfect thing to add on to this list of the books I just recommended. I can't really go in depth about it because there's just so much that happens in all of them, but I do feel like it provided like that fairy tale romance, and I just feel like I had to add that to this list. Like, that's just such a given. Something whimsical, something magical, and yeah, I had so much fun with it. So if you guys do pick it up, I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you haven't picked it up, or if you had picked it up, I hope you guys enjoyed it. But obviously, again, if you didn't, totally fine. Everybody has their own opinions, totally fine. So that is it for all the books I recommend for reading for the month of February. I honestly had so much fun curating this like list last minute, but I really hope you guys enjoyed this list because I tried to make the list a little bit different. I wanted to make it a little bit more personal and unique, and I wanted to create like different themes and tones other than just like cheesy contemporary rom-coms. I wanted to do other things that had like that basis of romance. Sorry, my camera shut off. I'm going to wrap up this video, and thank you so much for watching. I know I always say this, but don't forget to please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you guys do pick up these books, please let me know what you guys think of them. I hope you guys are having an amazing reading month so far, and I will see you guys on the next video.